Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to NBA Muslims. I'm Layla Abdullah-Poulos. I'm sorry for the little bit of delay, but as you guys all know, it's live, so things happen. And typically, you are accustomed to me interviewing authors and talking about their work, and it usually branches off into a discussion. But this time, I'm doing it a little bit different. I am actually taking a topic that is plaguing Muslim women in American Muslim society, and I pulled in a brilliant woman to talk to me about it. And so please welcome Dilshad Ali, editor of Pathos Muslim and the Muslimah Next Door. Assalamu alaikum, Dilshad.
Hey, wa alaikum salam, Layla. Yes, hello, it's me, Dilshad Ali. I have been editor at Pathos Muslim, managing editor there for about 5 years, and have spent about 15 years covering Muslims in America for a variety of media outlets. And this topic that Layla and I want to talk about is something that's come up in my coverage and coordination of coverage time and time again. And I think there's some things that Layla and I are frustrated about that we want to talk about.
That's right. We're going to talk about it. Okay, so the name of this online discussion is Pepper Spray and Prayer, a discussion on American Muslim woman safety. And so we kind of came up with the name because I was talking to Dilshad, and I was like, I was reading an article that she sent me, and yet another article of a Muslim woman being attacked, which is terrible. And one of the things that stuck in my head was that she said, I will pray for his soul. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that prayer is good, but you need pepper spray too. Where was the pepper spray at the time? And so right. that's what led to this discussion. Now, there has been an uptick, Dilshad, in attacks on Muslim women.
There has, and I pulled up some statistics. I think especially since the elections on November 8th, I was looking up statistics on the Southern Poverty Law Center, and there were 65 incidences alone in the 3 days since the election. And up till now, there's been hundreds, like more than 150 anti-Black, more than 50 anti-Muslim, anti-women, about 40, anti-immigrant, more than 200. There's a lot going on and a lot of attacks being reported.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's try to put some perspective in it. So first of all, these attacks are not exclusively Muslim women that occurred after Trump's presidency. As a matter of fact, I believe the majority were immigrant targets.
Yes.
And they're Black, anti-immigrant, and then anti-Black. Okay, so it was a feeding frenzy of hate type of thing.
Yeah, it's like, hello, he won. Go do what you want to do.
I know, because I don't remember a bunch of people of color going out and harassing white people after Obama was elected. But okay, I guess, it's a different set of rules. Okay. So
I don't know. But like, even like, swastika vandalism went up, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
It is crazy. They got emboldened. That's what happened. But
they got emboldened.
This is not something that's new either. And
no.
So this is something that the uptick of targeting Muslims and targeting Muslim women and targeting covered Muslim women, especially, has occurred in fluctuations, even just in the 21st century from 9/11 forward. So you had 9/11, you had the Paris attack, you had Belgium. So every time people are kind of upset with Muslims in this country, they decide, let's go harass people that we
You remember the London bombings? I think that was 2007.
The London bombing, exactly.
After that too,
Persian Gulf War and
the Gulf War, yep.
So it happens, and even the Iran hostage crisis.
Yep, even go all the way back there.
So we have not taken care, or at least addressed this issue effectively, because it seems like we're always shocked when it happens, even though it's happened over and over and over again. And the old adage, it's like history repeats itself. So we're not, if those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So are we doing that? Are we stuck in this flux of ignoring the obvious and not really doing much about it?
I think there's two things happening. I think we have been ignoring the obvious in lieu of focusing on other issues and other problems that we probably felt as a society were much more needing of our attention, and not this, where this should have been part of our attention all along. And I think maybe it was never reported enough, or people didn't speak up enough about it. And this is, I'm just theorizing. I can't point to evidence at this point to say this is true or not, but I'm theorizing, you know, after all these years of covering Muslims in America, that it simply wasn't being reported in the media, or Muslims themselves were not reporting this to law enforcement or to people in authority or fighting back, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know. But I think both those things fit into it.
Well, I think there's definitely some nuance here, because coming from the perspective of a Black Muslim,
Right.
There definitely was encouragement of addressing issues of bias, extending from the broader racist society, but also from Black Muslims being targeted within the Black culture. You know, it did happen. And so it was something that was addressed. And so the protection of women is especially is something that has always been addressed at various levels in Black Muslim culture. And you do have that heritage. So even if you go back to the Black Muslim movement and Malcolm X, that's something that he strongly addressed consistently, was the protection of women. So there's always this underrunning theme in safety in general in Black Muslim communities, the protection and the empowerment of women. Is that something that just has simply not occurred in other Muslim subcultures?
I think one can make an argument for that it wasn't as prevalent in other subcultures. You know, again, I cannot speak for Arab American Muslims. I can talk a bit about South Asian culture and South Asian Muslims, and I don't think it was as prevalent. I don't think it was taught as strongly as it was in Black Muslim society. And I think they were, you know, a bunch of subcultures existing and working on different issues, but not recognizing the commonalities or the things that other cultures were doing, and where we need to be aligned together and what we should be focusing on together. That wasn't there for such a long time.
So perhaps that chasm, that disconnect, that cultural disconnect, for whatever reason, we're not going to get into that. That'll be a whole nother online discussion.
Sure.
Has been at the detriment of Muslim women generally.
Yeah,
because
I think so.
There wasn't an opportunity to kind of see the issue, address the issue, and draw on the experiences of your fellow Muslims to really construct solutions, potential solutions to it. So Muslim women once again find themselves thinking about how they're going to traverse through a society that's aggressive towards them, not only because of the aggression of the society, but very much because Muslim culture, our Muslim men, I'm just going to call them out, by and large, okay, have fallen short in really sending a message that you don't mess with our women. We're going to protect our women, and even encouraging Muslim women in adopting ways and methods and means to protect themselves. I think by and large they may have fallen. They have fallen.
I would agree. I would agree to that. I would agree that, you know, messages of protection or teaching us how to protect ourselves, other than, you know, be quiet or, you know, be demure. Nothing there. There's not much more said than that, and there should be more said than that. You know, like you and I were talking about how there is definitely a place where one needs to, you know, be quiet and assess the situation, but there's also other tactics and other things and other ways we need to consider to protect ourselves. And where has that been taught, or has that not been taught in the past? I can't think of examples in the South Asian Muslim American culture where those things were taught. You know, I mean, it's a conversation happening now. But like you said, this has been going on for decades, you know? And come November 9th, when we all started freaking out, I could just see the conversation from my Black Muslim sisters saying, oh, sure, now you get it, don't you?
Not only now do you get it, but what is with all the hoopla? I mean, you know.
Like, what are you also freaked out about? Was this a shock?
You mean you didn't have your pepper spray before he was elected? You didn't see that possibility?
Right. No, seriously, I will own it. I will own it, you know? Yeah.
Well, I think that there was kind of a ripping off of a Band-Aid of hate, you know, for some Muslim populations. And, you know, that was just a reality of being Black and American. And so that it wasn't the same. So I remember
Right.
posting, saying to my non-black Muslims, if Donald Trump presidency terrifies you, you don't know what it means to be black in America, because
Right.
Donald Trump is
Right.
just one of a long line of presidents that have been racist and everything else. I mean, the
Mhm.
very president, Lyndon B. Johnson, that signed the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, he called us the N-word. He was like, I'm
Right.
gonna get those N votes.
Right.
But he signed those acts. So it's very much a part of it. And so I think that by not really joining together and listening to each other, Muslim men in general have fallen short with that, and Muslim women in general have fallen short with that, because being quiet does not work.
No, no, it
Not
doesn't.
all the time. And
Not
maybe,
all the time. And I think you and I are in agreement about this. I think we know, and there are situations in which you should look out for yourself and be quiet. And I was mentioning this to you. You know, I think one needs to look at where they are, who they're with, are they alone, what's the surroundings, what time of day is it, and use all that to make a quick, snap, informed decision. About, do you stay quiet in the moment? Do you fight back in the moment? Do you have your hand in your pocket on your pepper spray at that time? I mean, you should be ready, you know? But the larger story is, okay, even if you're going to stay quiet in the moment, you don't have to stay quiet afterwards, nor should you, right? How many times have things gone unreported, or you've just swallowed it, or just come home and not said anything, you know? And why should
and
you
I tell
take
you,
that?
because we have a bunch of quotes from Muslim women scholars, and that's one of the things that Marguerite Hill said. Marguerite
Yeah.
Aziz said. She said, if anything, report it to authorities. So
Yeah.
even if you can't say anything at that moment, and there's wisdom in the Quran about that. When Allah says, when a believer encounters ignorance, they say peace. So there is
Right.
something about de-escalating the situation and not saying anything.
Right.
But from that point, you are empowered to do other things. So
Right.
at least report it to the authorities, so that there's some accountability on the perpetrator, and perhaps that person won't escalate to when they decide to target someone else.
And I think
Okay.
that's really important, you know, and sometimes elders in my community or others will argue back that it won't go anywhere, it's a waste of time or something, but I don't believe that. I mean, even if you don't get closure from reporting a situation like that, or the person who attacked you or yelled at you or whatever does not get disciplined, at least they'll get put on notice. At least they'll know that you didn't stay quiet about it. I mean, it's a step towards something. And while we're looking at these quotes, I was really taken aback by the one, or not taken aback, but I really liked the one by Sahar Abdulaziz, where she writes,
My
it's,
lioness. I
I
told her.
love it. She writes,
I
it's
said,
not
every
the
time you quote,
responsibility of, sorry, I'm sorry.
sorry.
It's not the responsibility of American Muslim women to convince racist and xenophobic bullies that we are not terrorists, but it sure as hell is our right and responsibility to make them wish they hadn't assumed we were all a bunch of soft targets.
Mm-hmm. That's my
I
lioness.
love that.
I told her, every time I quote you, I'm going to put a lioness. Because it's not our responsibility, and it is not our responsibility to completely become something that we're not. Okay. And so
No.
that gets into conversation. That gets into the next question that we have, which is, do we draw attention to ourselves for these attacks? And do we exude fear as Muslim women?
That's a good
And
question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm kind of wondering if that is kind of like putting the onus of someone else's aggression on us. Like somehow it is our responsibility that this person is aggressive towards us because they see us as an easy target. And I don't want it to be where every Muslim woman feels like she has to turn into a Nusayba bin Ka'b, for example, ready to cut her head off, get her head cut off, battling and getting arrows thrown at her, protecting the prophet, because that's not what every person is. That's not what every person
No,
is. Definitely not what
no.
every Muslim woman is. So what is it about? Should we be placing that much onus on us being just obviously Muslim?
Look,
And
I mean, I really stand by the phrase that I've heard a lot of late, and I've used it myself about being unapologetically Muslim. I do feel strongly about that. I mean, I was born and raised in this country, and I started my hijab more than a decade ago when I was in my late 20s. And I don't feel compelled to change any of me for anybody else. And I don't think removing the scarf or anything like that will make any difference, because I'm still not going to look the typical quote unquote American way. You know, I remember being on a panel for the stream at Al Jazeera last year, about a year ago. In fact, a year ago this month, and Donna Austin was on the panel with me. And she said it. She said the most basic, obvious thing: you can remove your hijab, but you're still going to be Black. You can remove your hijab, but you're still going to be brown or whatever. You know, it ain't going to change. So in one aspect, I don't think the onus is on us to change ourselves. I think the onus is on us to be confident in who we are, and to not be vulnerable, or not feel weak in what is our rights, and what is our responsibilities, and what is our duty to do or not do, and to be confident in ourselves. And that confidence, and that is something I think needs to be taught, needs to be spoken about. We need to know how to do that more. You know, we need to learn from other subcultures. We need to learn from what, you know, Black Muslim community has known for so long. And we have to learn that, you know, more now, more than ever.
Well, I think it's because, and Donna's point is, as usual for her, right on the mark.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think it's because we tend to misperceive being Muslim as the problem, as opposed to being different or the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if it was solely about the fact that we have this on, then you wouldn't see women who don't wear it getting attacked, okay?
Yeah.
Or men who don't wear it getting attacked. You wouldn't see Sikh men getting attacked.
Yep. Exactly.
Because it's really about what these predators, okay, these bigoted and racist predators decide is an ideal type, what they're looking at and what they're looking for. And so you fit that mold for them.
Yeah.
And it could be anybody. It could be because you're covered. It could be because you're brown. It could be because you may be fair skinned, but there's this term swarthy. So
right.
you look very much Eastern European or Middle Eastern.
Right.
And so you still become a target for this anger and this aggression from these predators. And so to say that it's, you know, because you're wearing this hijab kind of glosses over that. And I don't think it makes even uncovered Muslim women safe, because it lends to this notion that all I have to do is take this off of my head and I'll be fine. And it's not. And secondly, I think conversations in Muslim communities and households that have this really reflect a underappreciation of what it means to a lot of Muslim women who decide to cover and navigate through a society that they know don't like it. Okay. You know, unless you just got off the plane 10 seconds ago and never saw a television set anywhere from where you're from, there's no way that you don't know that here in American society, this is something that they don't want and they don't like. Okay. So do we then, as Muslims, start to cater to that? And if so, why are we doing that? Why are we saying, you know, because if you ask, and I'll kind of like pull in the conversations that I've had with white Muslim women, Euro-American Muslim women.
Right.
There's no way in the world they're taking it off, because what's you know, first of all, they have full ownership in the society as white women. And you don't tell them what to do. You don't tell an American what to do. You can't tell, this is my right as American and I'm going to wear it. But also, I've decided to wear it, and it was a thought process that I went into when I decided to wear it. So you telling me that, oh, well, just take it off and all your problems will be solved. No, I'll have another problem. I'll have a further trauma of, first of all, I don't have the same rights as other people. Secondly, my relationship with the law is tied to my decision to wear this.
Right.
You know, a lot of Muslim women, this is an active form of worship, and that's the reason why they wear it. So to just tell them kind of like pull it off and that's it, really feeds this idea that you don't value what I'm trying to do fi sabilillah, and you're not so inclined, at least at this point, to help me to worship my Lord by actively doing this.
Right.
Okay. And so I think that that's a problem in Muslim communities, and we really need to kind of change that idea in those discussions and
I
those
agree.
dialogues.
I agree. But
And
I do want
so
to say, I do want to say that I understand. I've always said this in any other interview I've done or anything I've written, that I do get that everybody has different amounts of fear, or they don't have fear, or there's things that make them nervous. And I'm not going to go out and tell somebody that you don't be scared. You know, it's going to be okay, you know, and your fear is your fear. Your fear is your fear, and your worries are your worries, and whatever personal things you're going through is yours. And I know there have been women who wore a headscarf and decided not to, out of fear or other reasons, or adjusted the way they wear it, you know, hats or something or other. And, you know, it's between you and Allah.
But
I'm
calling Muslim communities to account for that. I'm calling.
Okay.
I'm. What is that? Shout out. What is that? Not shout out. What is it called? Call out. I'm very much doing a call out culture thing right now, because a Muslim woman in this society should not have that level of fear, because ideally she is supposed to be a part of a community that is going to support her and safeguard her. And that came, and you know, there was a post you sent me by Sarah Saeed at the mayor's office.
Yeah,
and
she's in the New York City's mayor's office.
Yeah, and she said that was one of the things she said. Listen, you know, I actually thought about it for a quick second. And then that flew by. But yeah, what is it? What is it? Why is it worth wearing it? She wanted to bring out that conversation and see what happens. And a lot of the feedback was like, it's terrible that you have to feel this way. It's terrible that you have to think this way. And I think that that very much is reflective on what especially the Muslim leadership is doing to, or lack of the Muslim leadership properly addressing this in a broad enough sense, so that there are safeguards in place, so that a Muslim woman does not have to feel like, okay, well, some fool blew up something. Now do I have to compromise my convictions in the way that I feel because my Muslim community is not going to protect me?
And did you notice on that post, I didn't count them up, but it seemed to me that there were a lot more non-Muslims who were comforting her and telling her, you got to, you know, I support you. I stand for your right. We're not going to let anyone mess with you. I mean, this is a Facebook post, so okay, you can't really read so much into that, but it was interesting.
Yes, you can.
It was interesting.
They're human beings. They're human beings, and they want to express what they want to express at that particular time. And I can tell you, I can give you an example of back, I believe it was like earlier this year, late in 2015. There was something called the Hijab Grab Challenge, where some fool posted this challenge on Facebook to grab a Muslim woman's hijab off and videotape it. And so I very much do look at social media a lot to kind of get a pulse on what's going on. And so I saw in a lot of posts by women, non-Black women, that they were saying, oh my God, this is happening. Be safe, watch where you're going, and everything like that. And the non-Black, and I didn't really hear much from non-Black Muslim men, so I don't know, but or non-native born Muslim men, because the native born Muslim men were like, oh, heck no, go ahead and try it. Go ahead and try and touch one of our women. And the Muslim women were like, go ahead. I got something in my purse for you. So it was very much different. Like this whole idea of, you know, Muslim women being targeted, and these notions of, listen, you know, someone's going to get cut, you know, like from certain subcultures. That's very much the outlook. You know, not every single Muslim woman in one subculture feels that way, but there is this voice that's going on where it's just like, oh no, what's happening? And I'll pray for them. And another one, like, I'm going to pray that, you know, when I cut you, that you're going to remember.
Oh boy. Or there's got to be somewhere in the middle that we can meet.
Maybe somewhere in the middle, or, you know, or at least know that you have options.
No, I think I'm totally with you. You have to know that you have options, and you have to be prepared, and you have to, you know, we have to figure out ways to build that confidence in ourselves, to feel unapologetic about who we are, and to be prepared when we are out and about, and to not be, you know, weak, or not be feeling vulnerable, but like feel like we can handle things, and, you know when it's better to be quiet, know when it's better to fight back, know that you should report things. We were talking about I was thinking in my head about two very different examples in the media. One was the reporting of Ilhan Omar, the representative from Minnesota, who was yelled at, I think yelled at by her cabbie when she got to DC, right?
Yeah.
And then if you juxtapose that against like two or three of the most recent stories, Amani Al-Khattabi always has the best stories. You know, by best I mean she seems to go through a lot because she travels so much. You know, about coming into New York at JFK at the border control and getting harassed there, or getting harassed at the post office at Grand Central Station, and how she handled it, and then how she portrayed. I mean, she has a media company at her disposal. Muslim Girl is her thing, and so she uses that to talk about those stories. And it's interesting to think about how they're reported, which is another thing I know we wanted to talk about, and I know time's getting short, but
yeah.
How are these stories getting reported, you know, and how are they getting written, and how does that affect how society then looks at us as Muslim women, right?
Well, I think that the overwhelming majority of these stories, first of all, very much have like a brown face to it, and they're always shrinking violence. And I even think that Muslim media is very complicit, and in it, you very rarely see those those highlighting those things where Muslim women are being strong and they're being empowered. Typically, that comes from the non-Muslim media. Those the non-Muslim media that kind of want to say, oh, look at these Muslim women, look, she's teaching them how to grab, what happens if they get their hijab grab, isn't she busted a stereotype, like that type of thing. But I think the overwhelming majority of the stories really place us in a victim role, and it makes us even more vulnerable, you know. And that's one of the things that the Salafi feminist pointed out, and when I asked her about it, and she said, let me find her. Okay, the media's framing of Muslim women as passive victims plays into a convenient narrative that lends to the idea of non-Muslims, or rather the West, being needed to swoop in and rescue us. Okay, so it definitely feeds that point. But I also think it feeds this whole idea of making us look helpless and weak, so that somehow we can garner that. Okay, so instead of coming from a stronger standpoint of demanding our rights, and like you said, having that confidence, I think we're used as a trope, even by Muslims, to kind of say, look, we need you to kind of help us out and rescue us and save us. And the fact of the matter is that non-Muslim society is not going to save you. You cannot ask your oppressors to save you. It doesn't work that way. Now, there could be allies from within that society, people who are looking at it and saying that this is wrong. And, you know, alhamdulillah, that happens across the board. That's the beautiful thing about humanity, is that that's the reason why you can't say, well, I'm afraid of white people, or I'm afraid of black people, because skin color has nothing to do with human behavior. So you have whites who are indoctrinated into the society of race, and they resist against that, and they ally with people who are subjugated because of it, in order to help with equity, in them attaining equity. So it is very much about the conversations that are happening, and I think it's time for Muslim women to take over those conversations. And so I asked a few Muslim women that I think are very, very bright thinkers and writers, their perspectives on it. And so Hind Zuberi from Muslim Matters, she says, while Muslim women, especially those who cover, are not on the front lines confronted with rabid hate and targeted attacks, the consistent image portrayed of vulnerable Muslim women crying on screen, sharing their stories, slaps a victim logo on all of us. The message that it sends within the community is terribly debilitating as our youth internalize it. The majority of us are not afraid. We don't live in constant fear. Yes, we're more aware of our surroundings. More of us are taking self-defense classes and organizing, but the majority of Muslim women are not victims, and we don't choose to live like victims. Media needs to do a better job of highlighting Muslim women who are thriving despite the rising hate crimes, the uncertainty, and the multitude of hurdles placed in their path. And so that's what Hind Zuberi. Yeah, I know.
Hind Zuberi is brilliant, and
she pumped it out in like a second.
But
I
she's
think,
right, though. She's right. I mean, I think what's at issue here and what's at stake here is that there's too many of one type of stories being shared and not enough of this type of stories being shared. And media is such that now, we do have a lot of control in our own hands to build those narratives and to share those on multitudes of platforms. And that is happening. It needs to happen more. It needs to happen more. And it affects how we share our stories. You and I talked about this. Which stories are we sharing on social media? How are we framing those stories when we share them? Are we framing them in this is so scary mentality? Are we framing them in we got to do something about this mentality? I mean, how do you frame things, And that goes to how you tweet them, how you share them on Facebook, how you pass them between friends, all of that matters. They're such tiny little increments, but they add up. They really do, And for those of us who try to increase our connections, to be out of our silos and be out of our echo chambers and try to reach a cross culture of people and do things like that, the way we share stories and the way we frame them, it really does make a difference, I think.
Well, I think that one of the problems that we have is that there's just this overwhelming sense, tendency to ignore Black Muslim perspective and Black Muslim women's voices. So as limited the American Muslim woman's voice is, the Black Muslim woman's voice is even more so. Because
I agree.
Because after all of the, like when the Trump attack, the post-election attacks, I don't want to say his name, I don't want to try to give him any more of my space. The post-election attacks occurred. There were a lot. Oh, Muslim women are being attacked, this and that. And there was a lot of conversation, should I cover or shouldn't I cover? And there was one brilliant blogger, Jawaria, who said, what I know after being born, raised, and living as a Muslim for over 30 plus years in is that American Muslim women are some of the strongest, faithful, giving, creative, proud, resolute, making things happen, and transcending women in the entire world. See, the Muslim women that I know were not raised to hide their faith. They weren't raised to feel less than or cower in front of any man, be they kings or presidents. The American Muslim women that I know are business owners, lawyers, students, homemakers, and world travelers. They proudly take their Islam wherever they go. Any hardship they face, they plow through it with their heads held high. So that was muted. And what was highlighted was this victimization of Muslim women, especially Muslim women from certain ethnicities, very finite parameters. There's a lot more of fostering this ideal stereotype of Muslim women from one background, a couple of backgrounds of cultures, typically South Asian or Middle Eastern, despite the fact that in the country, there is no majority. The South Asians aren't the majority, Blacks aren't the majority, and Arabs aren't the majority. Run within the 20s of each, the last Pew Research poll. But what do you see constantly? You constantly see Muslim women from certain ethnicities being highlighted and certain experiences and perspectives being highlighted. And there's no counter narratives. There's very little counter narrative. And so, like, for instance, you quoted Donna Austin. All right. How many non-Black Muslim women are making themselves, availing themselves of her brilliance?
Everyone should.
It's like, who, there's nearly not enough people listening. I mean, this is a brilliant Black Muslim woman.
And it's not that she's not speaking. She is speaking on multitude of platforms,
She's
it's not
tough as nails for as little as she is.
Yeah.
So you hear these voices, but you don't hear these voices. And the thing is that these voices can at least broaden the perspectives so that you don't always have to feel victimized. You don't always feel like you don't have anything that you can do, that you have to be quiet all the time. And that, honestly, that our Muslim men don't have to do anything for us. Okay, and they don't have to protect us. It's all of our responsibility, and it's kind of like we're blamed. There's a little bit of victim blaming here because we decided to dress a certain way, or we decided to dare go out of the house and not cower inside of the house. That somehow we're to blame. When being Muslim and being a woman does not strip away our autonomy, or our rights. They're our rights. Allah gave us our rights, our human rights. And so just because we have the right to go out into the society and not feel like we have to be, we're going to be harassed. And we need to call Muslim men in the communities to account for that. And that's something that's not done nearly enough. So I think that there definitely need to be things done within the Muslim community, outside the Muslim community. I think that Muslim women, just like Black women have done, just like Latina women have done in this society, and Asian American women have got to take control of their narrative.
I think it's about taking control of your narrative. I think it's about, in a very practical sense, of preparing yourself. Have that pepper spray in your purse. Be ready.
People go to pepper spray.
There's going to be a run on pepper spray now.
And there should be though.
Yeah.
There should be a run on pepper spray. There should be if you're a student, and if you're a college student. Okay, most colleges have self-defense courses, or at least their security office has measures in, so that you don't have to feel like you're a victim. You don't have to feel like you're not safe. When my daughter got accepted to her college, the first thing that I said, okay, let's go look at the security office online and see what they have to offer you, because quite frankly, you're an American Muslim woman on a college campus, and that's not the safest space to be. First of all, being an American woman on college campuses is not the safest space.
Or not, just being a woman.
So you really need to learn what is it that they have to offer.
You need to be practical about this stuff. Like you said, I went to college decades ago, and there were escort services. If you're at class late at night, to walk you to your car in the parking lot, there are things in place, and how we teach our kids when they're little about don't take candy from strangers or online predators these days, whatever we teach our kids, alongside that, let's teach them how to be confident. Let's teach them how to be prepared. What do you do if something happens? How do you assess your situation? Who do you report to? We could feel bad and sad that we have to have these conversations, but why? Let's just be smart and practical about it. Let's be smart and practical about that. Let's be careful about how we share our stories and what stories we should be sharing. Let's be elevating voices that needed to be elevated. All those things matter. All of them, But 15 years of covering Muslims in America has taught me that. And it's a work in progress. I'm still working on it. Who I was as a journalist 5 years ago, I think I'm better now, always learning. You got to always learn.
You're always learning. And Muslim communities need to provide educational resources as well. And I know that even before the election and everything like that, my community offered self-defense classes for men and for women as well. So even before the election, there were self-defense classes. They have a security detail, and they have these discussions about protecting Muslim women and protecting Muslims in the society, because look, this has been going on for a long time. And so to kind of keep on waiting for non-Muslims to kind of get it right, I got to tell you.
Can't wait.
As somebody coming from a heritage of consistent and constant subjugation and oppression, it's not a matter of them getting it right, because they don't get it right. They don't get it completely right. Just by virtue of the fact that you still have a prison industrial complex is an example that they don't get it right. Just the need for a Black Lives Matter movement and juxtapose and resisting against the police brutality on Black bodies is an example that they don't get it right. You can't wait for them to get it right. You have to be more proactive. So Muslim communities really need to be doing that. And just like I one of the things that I noticed here in New York or on Long Island in the suburbs was that there are enclaves of ethnicity in Muslim communities. There are very few really diverse Muslim communities, at least where I live. And so there are like a couple. Okay, my community is one of them. But after 9/11, the Muslim communities that were predominantly Desi and Arabs, the one thing that they did was they went into Black communities and they hired Black Muslims to do security around their masajid, because their masajid were getting targeted, not the Black Muslim masajid.
Right.
And so they hired Black Muslim security, because Black Muslims had security, and they had security companies, and they had
it in place.
You know, but one of the things that they haven't really done, that I've noticed very effectively, is that they haven't learned from it. So instead of just simply having, you know, the black bodies there to secure you, learn how to secure yourselves as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and have educational resources for Muslims to empower themselves, especially Muslim women, especially covered Muslim women, because we're the biggest targets. So are you going to
yeah,
be
yep.
satisfied in keeping us that way, or to move on? And I think we also need to be better organized at bringing law enforcement to task on this. So almost every police organization, at least especially in urban areas or suburban areas, has some kind of hate crimes task force. I know that it's prevalent in Southern New York, the NYPD that has it, Nassau Police Department, Suffolk County Police Department. Go to them and say, listen, you see all of this right here? How are you going to make sure that this is not going to happen to me? Okay,
Right,
because it's their
right.
job. Okay, so I think that Muslim women need to present a united front of you are going to do your job, and you're going to protect us, and you're at least going to learn about what's happening, so that when I come to you, because some jerk that said something to me or threw something at me, or was stupid enough to grab me, and you have to go and see whether or not he's still alive in the hospital. You don't know where it came
Nobody
from.
cross Layla.
Listen, I don't want to do anything to anybody at all. I
Yeah,
don't want to do anything to anybody because I'm held accountable to Allah. But that doesn't mean
right,
I won't. It
right.
just means I don't want to. Okay. I also think that, you know, that you see like these little pockets of self-defense classes. Muslim organizations and Muslim communities really need to start thinking about funding so that there's
Yeah,
consistency in offering those self-defense classes to the youth, because they're
I
going into
agree.
those schools and getting bullied.
I
Okay,
agree.
to in Muslim communities overall, so that there is definitely this sense that you can learn how to handle the situation when it comes. Of course, there's no perfect way of doing it. You know, people may end up, you know, you may end up a deer in headlights, but at least you have the tools to use
Exactly,
if you
exactly.
need them. And so I think they really need to be, you know, like everyone's funding things left and right. We need to really be solidly funding our defense of ourselves and engaging in defense of self. And I don't think we do that consistently. And I think that Muslim women, until Muslim leadership gets it right, they need to be doing it even
Yeah,
more
you need
so.
to step up and take that ownership.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're going to have to
make it
take that
happen.
ownership and call them to account and demand. Listen, no, we need this. We don't need another class on how to please your man and how to be a happy Muslim woman.
Another sister's
Okay?
halakha. We need a self-defense class.
We need a self-defense class. We need to know how to take somebody down. We need to know how to cut and run. We need to know how to do what we need to do so that we can be safe. Okay.
We need to know our rights. I mean, all those care.
Exactly.
I mean, they perfected it. You know, the presentation on know your rights. We need those. We need more of those. We need the self-defense classes. All of that as a package. You know,
And we need to
have to
really
become a priority.
and we need to take a more proactive role in not sharing these stories in a way that reinforces this misconception that we are a bunch of soft targets. That's what we
And
really
I
need.
think that's the key there, Layla, in how we share the stories. You know, you and I talked about this, about how I worry. There's a part of me that still wants to share the stories because I want it to be known that it's happening. But it's how you share those stories. You know, it's how you share it, and like you said, in a way that people know that we're not soft targets. I mean, that is what it is right there. You know, and it matters, and how you share it on Twitter and how you share it on Facebook. It matters. It is.
It definitely matters. I still remember there was this post few days back about a Muslim girl that went missing, and how she said
Yes.
that she was harassed, and then a couple of days later she went missing. Now, of course, not saying don't cover that story. Okay, that's
Right.
very significant. You know, we got to find this woman.
Yeah.
But when you see the posts and the way and the headlines and the way that they frame it, it's just like, no, there's a missing Muslim woman. Let's find this missing Muslim woman. You know, you don't know that it's, you know, a couple of jackasses harassed her on a train and she's gone missing, and you want to very much frame it like somehow that they probably did what, came back a couple of days later and took her away. That may have happened, but you don't know that that's what's happened. So
Sure.
stop feeding that and really have some real clarity about the fact that this is a missing person, and let's find this missing person. Don't try to shove that, oh, the frail Muslim woman trope into it,
That's going to be a hard change,
oh, it's gonna
and
be
I'm not saying that we shouldn't try for it. We have to try for it, but it's always framed that way because that's how you get the most attention on those stories. That's like the sex appeal of media,
Yeah.
I mean, I know
Let
that.
it be the sex appeal for non-Muslims. It doesn't have to be the sex appeal
Yeah.
for Muslims. And,
For
and,
Muslims.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
we have our own media platforms, and so we
Yeah.
can disseminate those stories and share those stories in a more candid and empowering way. Okay,
Empowering way.
so that the objective is, listen, this is what's happening. What we going to do about it? How are we going, like in this area here? There's all of a sudden this uptick of violence against Muslim and against Muslim women. What's going to happen then in that area? And we have so many organizations where we can do that. The thing is why aren't we doing that? That becomes
Well,
the prevailing question. And Muslim women need to be calling people to account, because we're very educated,
yeah.
okay, especially our generation,
Yep.
okay, and we have our own money and we have our own voices. And if you really want us to
And we
dig
have our own
down,
platforms
and we
too.
have
They're
our own
right there for us.
platforms, so let's use our platforms. And again, and let's use our wallets. Listen, you want my money, but I don't want another halakha about, how to please your man. Okay. I don't want that. That's not what I need right now. What I need right now is a means and a method to protecting myself, because I do have to go out and I do have to traverse society. And it's unrealistic to think that I have to do otherwise. Okay.
Right.
Even though I have a husband and grown sons, I still have to get in the car by myself to get here. I still had to walk
Right.
around here. And they're single Muslim women. You're doing them a very big disservice by just kind of leaving them out there to respond to attacks instead of empowering them to react to attacks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
so I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and hopefully people have heard this, and we're gonna hit up some people and say, yeah, what we gonna do?
Now you guys send us some information. Send us some like answers. We've posed the question and we've
I'll
hashed
list
out
it,
the
but
problem.
people have to do it on a
Let's
local
get
level.
some solutions.
So like you have to get the Muslim women together in your area, and you have to go to your area mosques, and you have to go to your area law enforcement, and
Yep.
you have to make these demands on them and say, look, okay, this is what we need. And so can and we expect you, not can you please, we expect you to provide this for us, because being constantly corralled into this victim setting is no longer an option.
Yeah, and work this into how you parent and teach your kids too,
Oh,
How
definitely.
many of us have kids? And like I said, these have to be necessary conversations we have with them, in addition to the birds and the bees and don't eat candy from strangers and watch out for online predators. We got to have these conversations too. It's just part and parcel of parenting now as well.
Yeah. Well, they're not
Yeah.
having the conversations in the mosque. They're not having
Yeah.
conversations in the local community centers. They're not having these conversations, and they need to have these conversations, and they need to implement things more efficiently and across a broader scale, so that if I have to go out of town and I'm navigating through an area, that I know that there's a space for me where I can be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because right now, like if you drop me in the middle of Washington D.C., I don't know where to go to be safe if something goes down, or who to talk to or anything like that. Why?
Right.
Because we're all disjointed and we're not really talking about this, and we're not creating those spaces, and we're not disseminating ways so that Muslim women will know, if you're here, this is where you're safe. If you're here, this is where you're safe. This is what you need to learn in
Mm-hmm.
order, so that if that does happen to you, you do have options. You're not just left there to shrink. And oh dear God, do not talk to the media about it if that means that they're just going to plaster your face as just another helpless, hopeless victim, because that makes the rest of us unsafe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dilshad, for this excellent discussion.
Thanks for having me,
I
Layla.
really enjoyed it. And I have a feeling that this is not our only one.
No, I think we should. I got more things we can talk about.
I got a whole bunch of more things that we can talk about, and maybe we can pull some people in.
Yeah.
Well, but Jazakallah khairan, this is very important.
Oh,
and the recording will be available for people who did not get this, and I'll post it all over the place. And we can also start to kind of hit up those organizations that we're a part of, and we can kind of say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about this?
Yep.
All right. So Jazakallah khairan, and thank you everyone for tuning in to NBA Muslims and watching this online discussion. And look out for more. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, everybody.